it's unclear what Trump could even do to start patching over the stuff, because ultimately, I'm not sure he cares. And Trump, is now saying, yeah, it's a hoax. It's a hoax. It's which is what he says with anything that's true.
Yep.
Anytime he gets into trouble, he calls it a hoax, a Democratic hoax.
I have framed today because there's so much happening. So I've called this the collapsing Trump administration and the corruption of corporate centrist politics. And David, do you want to start with Republicans or Democrats? I'll let you tell me. I'll spin the
Well,
wheel.
maybe I'll start with you, because you are never one to mince words. Um, collapse. I don't see a collapse yet, but I do.
Collapsing. I said
But I do. But
collapsing.
again, collapsing. I see fractures.
Let's do
That's the.
fract.
That's what I'm. And what I've been thinking about lately, and maybe this holds true for both sides. You asked me about Democrats or Republicans. I've been thinking about what I call political gravity.
Hmm.
For Trump's been with us as a political player for a decade now. I can't believe it's taken up a decade of our lives, but for a decade now. And he seems to defy political gravity. He can,
Correct.
talk about grabbing women by the what. He can be
Yeah.
caught lying again and again. His corruption is out in the open. He's inept. He's incompetent. Many more people died under COVID than they needed to under his disgraceful mismanagement of that, and yet. He defies political gravity and comes back. He tries to overturn an election and a riot, the January 6th riot. So he seems to be impervious to general political rules. But what we've seen in the last couple of weeks, going back to the off-term elections that we
Yep.
had a couple of weeks ago and other things which I can name, is that political gravity still exists. People don't like what's going on with mass deportations, erratic tariffs, bad economic policy, and Trump, his revenge-a-thon, and they take revenge themselves on his party. They do what you would expect to happen. You can't alienate so much of the public and not have some consequence. That's the rule of politics. So the Republicans took a drubbing, particularly in New Jersey, the last election. We also see that the MAGA coalition, which is sort of what you were getting at, is not collapsing, has these fractures, because most political movements on the right and the left cannot sustain themselves for so long. The Tea Party did not last forever. Black Lives Matter, Occupy movement, the nuclear freeze movement going back a few decades. These things come, go, have more impact than others. But also, one thing that happens with a lot of political movements, unfortunately, is that they become cannibalistic and they
Yep.
start fighting amongst themselves. And so we see now with MAGA all these fault lines coming up, whether it's over the inclusion of Nick Fuentes and Hitler fanboys in the conservative coalition, about Israel itself, about the Epstein files, or about what to do with health care and the extension of the Obama subsidies. They're starting to fight amongst themselves. And Trump is losing. He still has a pretty tight grip, but it's getting a little looser on MAGA people because he is a lame duck. And they just saw his unpopularity being expressed quite vividly in the last election. And so all these conventional rules of politics, gravity, you drop an apple, it falls to the ground, do seem to still exist. The notion that Trump had changed politics, a major strategic realignment, Bannon and others were talking about after the 24 election, young white men, Latinos, even, black males, a lot of them are going more to Trump than ever before, and they're going to stay with Trump and MAGA and Republicans. Well, no, the pendulum does swing. There are these political forces at play that, good because in some ways Trump's rise and his his ability to come back to the presidency would seem to suggest our political system is broken. A guy who tried to destroy the system gets back into power, shows you that the system can't preserve itself, that it's broken. But now we see, well, it may not be as broke as we feared it would be. So that's what I'm thinking. Collapsing, fracturing. There are all these fault lines, and it's unclear what Trump could even do to start patching over the stuff because ultimately, I'm not sure he cares.
Yeah, he probably is falling asleep. He's old. He probably doesn't care. He's made his money. And let's go with fracturing. Let's go top, then let's go internal. Let's go outward, then go inward. When it comes first to GOP, then we'll go to the Democrats. But I've said that I've been saying since the summer, David, that there's two Achilles cankles of Donald Trump that I thought that he could not escape. He could not defy gravity like Elphaba in Wicked, and that is the
Now
Epstein
playing
files.
theater near you.
And I saw it. My daughters made me see it.
Oh, I want to see it. Don't no
The
spoilers.
sequel is meh. The first one is great. This one is meh. And I
Okay.
asked my daughters, and they're like meh. But I digress. So he can defy gravity on Epstein and the economy. Now, the economy, for those who've been following the polls and following the left hook, he's negative double digits on inflation, negative double digits on tariffs, negative double digits on the prices. People are in pain. The one thing you can't lie about, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, apparently, David, we live long enough that you can lie about vaccines. You can lie about a COVID. You can lie about climate change, but you can't tell people they're doing well when they don't have money in the wallet. You can't tell people everything's going great when they're struggling to buy groceries. So he's negative on the economy. He's also negative on the Epstein files, and he can't escape both. And specifically Epstein files, David, I believe this is one of the biggest political cover-ups that I've seen in my life, and especially in modern history, because everything to me seems that Donald Trump is behaving like a man who is hiding something. Like if I'm him and I have nothing to hide, I will placate my base that I have radicalized over 10 years on this issue and say, here you go. Here's the stuff that I promised, the Epstein
Hmm.
files. Go at it.
Hmm.
I would not, I don't know, give a special deal to Glenn Maxwell. I would, I don't know, have Pam Bondi then retract her promise to release the Epstein files. I would not, I don't know, threaten openly Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massey. When it comes to the Epstein files, you've been in the town. You're a young man of 25, but you've seen a lot. Uh, the Epstein files and what it threatens to do to not just Trump, but to those in power, David.
You know, glad you mentioned that because I wrote about this very recently in my Rland newsletter, and
Which you
I
can get
admit,
on davidcorn.com.
thank you, and I admitted or I noted that in a bit that I've been flummoxed by by Trump's reaction to the Epstein files. Now I know that sometimes it's wrong and counterproductive to try to you know, impart or impart sense and logic upon Trump and his decision making, because often it's just highly transactional. He will do what he thinks is best for the moment and not even think about what it might mean an hour later, let alone a day later or a week later. So he spent, as you noted, years feeding the frenzy on the right that comes out of Pizzagate and QAnon
Yep.
about this crazy, a global cabal of satanic baby eaters and sex traffickers and pedophiles.
That's all of
And
us, by the way. That's you and me, David. Yeah,
yeah.
apparently.
Well, I'll see you at the meeting next week.
Yeah.
And so he did that, and then like Epstein comes along and kind of reemerges as an issue in 2018, 2019, whenever it was. And finally, this crazy theory that, that QAnon and Pizzagate, Jack Posobiec and other people have been pushing for years now has like an actual real world manifestation. And they zero in on Epstein because it seems to line up with this, conspiracy theory they've been pushing for years. And Trump and Don Jr. and Cash Patel and Dan Boji Bongino and all these guys are out there claiming it's a cover up, it's the Democrats. This is the way to show how corrupt the deep state is. And they lean into it real heavy, including Trump, who says, during the last campaign, I'm going to release the files. Now, he could have done this while he was president. He was president. His people always forget. Side note, that he was president for 4 years. So when they say no one's ever done this before, no one's ever thought about tariffs, no one's ever thought about going after sex predators, no one's thought of, well, what do you say about Trump? He was president as long as George H.W. Bush was president before, but nevertheless, he goes in the front, he bangs the drum on releasing the Epstein files, and you got to think, well, if it's bad for me, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. Maybe this will come back to bite me. Why would he do this if he thought if he had a vulnerability there? But he does it anyway. Then he gets into office, and they say they're going to release everything. Okay, that sounds good. Makes me think, if he's acting like a rational person, well, maybe there's nothing there that's really that bad. He knew Epstein, he hung out with Epstein, maybe he had an idea what Epstein was doing, but there's nothing that's directly incriminating. Because why would you do this? And then Pam Bondi puts out some documents, that already come out, and she says, oh no, I just got a new truckload of documents in, her words, truckload, and we're going to get those all out. And I'm thinking, and Trump says, yeah, okay, let's do that. So I'm thinking, okay, maybe it's not that bad for him. And then they do this total flip after he's told that there are all these documents in there that mention his name, and they could mention his name only because Epstein, as we clearly saw from the documents that have come out, was kind of obsessed with Trump and had interactions and talked about Trump. So then they say we're going to clamp down. And then, there's a fight between Bondi and Bongino and Kash Patel, and Trump, is now saying, yeah, it's a hoax. It's a hoax. It's, which is what he says with anything that's true.
Yep.
Anytime he gets into trouble, he calls it a hoax, a Democratic hoax. So now I'm thinking, my God, he is doing everything imaginable to make me rethink what I thought, and there must be something he's hiding. There must be some guilt here, right? And he basically tosses Marjorie Taylor Greene out of the party, who's
Yep.
really one of his biggest supporters. She was his warm-up act. She was his warm-up act. Imagine tossing out your warm-up act. Bruce Springsteen was the warm-up act for Chicago. Imagine if Chicago said, Bruce, get out of here. No, he tosses her aside. He then calls Tom Massey, who was also pushing for the release of the files, a complete nutball, and goes after him. And it's like, oh my goodness, Trump only does shit like this when he's exposed, when he's impeached, when he's accused of helping the Russians cover up what they did in terms of attacking the 2016 election, all this stuff. And so, so finally, only after the Republicans in Congress, this is interesting, back to fracturing, they broke with Trump. They
Yep.
did not, he was against this. They all ran, and it was an unanimous vote in the House, and then, except for one, and then in the Senate. And so Trump at that point,
Clay Higgins.
yeah. And at that point, Trump then says, okay, I'm for the transparency. I'm for releasing this stuff now too. But in the meantime, I want you to start an investigation only of Democrats, even though you've already said there's nothing in these files to justify any more investigation. And so maybe I'm doing that so that we can then tell people, sorry, we can't release anything while there are ongoing investigations. I mean, I've never seen anybody do so much to convince us that they're hiding something. And
There you go.
so, and it just hasn't played well with the base. We still going to, and it's not done. They have 30 days to release stuff. They may delay it with redactions and think about what to do with victims. I would just caution people, because I still am not convinced that there's stuff there that's going to be, mind blowing, particularly not even about Trump. Remember, these, both Biden and Trump administrations had access to this material. And if there was more to be investigated and more crimes to be prosecuted, you think that one of those two administrations might have done something. Plus, there are all these civil cases out there. No one, as far as we know, has filed a civil case against Trump on this or against Bill Clinton and these Democratic targets, Larry Summers. And so, expectations are high. And I think what has hurt Trump the most is the cover up. They always say the cover up is worse than the crime. That's not true. Sometimes it's not worse than the actual crime. But in this case, it's conceivable there may
Yep.
be a cover up without even a crime. And that, and given all the other things that Trump has done and presumable crimes he's probably has likely committed, he was indicted for, it'd be kind of interesting if the biggest political blow happens because he covered up something. It may just be bad behavior that wasn't actually illegal.
See, maybe, but I'm going to take a step further and say that I think he's covering something that could be illegal. I think he's covering not only his own actions, but also a money trail and other powerful people. And Virginia Giuffre, right before her memoir was released, Prince Andrew's titles were stripped from him, and now he's just Andrew. And he spent 14 years saying she's a liar. There's nothing there. And right when her memoir was released, now Prince Andrew is just Andrew. So I personally think something's there. But either way, your main point is, David, the conspiracy theory now is rampant because I'm like you. I was like, all right, a lot of people are talking about QAnon, Pizzagate. I'm sure it's bad, but it can't be that bad. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but now I've seen how they've behaved over the past year. And now I've become a conspiracy theorist. I'm like, yo, what are you hiding, bro? And the main thing is what people believe, right, Davis? What people believe.
Yep.
And now on Epstein files, he's negative 35. It's the only thing that independents, Republicans, and Democrats agree on. It's over 80% want the release of the Epstein files. And I think until you get full transparency, these whispers, these seeds, they will flourish, folks. And now you're seeing the fracturing. You're seeing over the economy, the election, Epstein files, the fracturing of MTG, Thomas Massie. And today, Axios came out with this. And I wanted to ask you about this. 41 members of the GOP have already announced they plan to call it quits at the end of their term. Republicans consider quitting Congress early over death threats and infighting. Wow. David.
Yeah, I mean, and also I think, this happens a lot if you think when you think you're about to lose the majority. People just, and let me be kind. To members of both parties, being a congressperson is tough. It's a tough job. It's not. I mean, we deride them a lot, but having two households going back and forth, taking a lot of crap from people, even if you're doing good work, it's just not an easy job. And a lot of them do it very poorly. I'm not excusing that, and they use it for their own ends, but just as a job. And so I think that if you're about to if you face the prospect of losing the majority, it's good to get out on top rather than be chased out, which is obviously the way that Marjorie Taylor Greene sees it. She doesn't want a big fight. But I do think, I mean, there have been death threats on both sides that have been rising over the past few years. I mean, listen, Trump has, as divisive and as ugly as our political discourse has been over the last 10, 20 years, Trump has made it worse. And, he has, caused stochastic terrorism by, basically encouraging people to view the other side as demonic, literally demonic and satanic communists who are trying to destroy the country. If you tell people that the Democrats are like that and that they're trying to destroy me because they're trying to destroy you, and that impeachment is not about me inciting a riot or using my leverage to get of a president of another country to dig up dirt on a political opponent, but it's about destroying you and your family. And you keep telling people this shit over and over again, you're going to get some people. It's a big country. There are 330 million people here. We have over 500 million guns. It doesn't take more than a couple of, nutballs to read that for what they think it means. So he's been doing everything he can to raise the temperature, create more violence. And I know it, Charlie Kirk got it as well. And that wasn't, due for anything that Trump said directly, but he has been a leading force. And it goes back to Newt Gingrich, it goes back to Sarah Palin, it goes back to Rush Limbaugh of tribalizing our politics and vilifying and delegitimizing the other side. And so that has made it tougher for members of Congress on each side. And I have heard from Democratic senators that one reason why Republicans have been so reluctant to challenge Trump and to yield all their power to Trump is because they fear for their own security, that they've been getting death threats every time they speak out against Trump, and that spouses have been telling members, "I don't want you to be out there in front leading any opposition." People have gotten calls saying, "Is your daughter enjoying Purdue? We know where she is." And
Well,
so
Mitt Romney said this 2 years ago when his biography came out. They said
yeah,
on the DL, his Republican colleagues said the reason why we don't more publicly come out against Trump is we're terrified, not of Antifa,
yeah.
not of the left, but from Republican voters.
Yeah, and you see what's happening with judges. Some are quitting as well. You saw what happened with the Minnesota Democrats. It has become a lot more frightening, and Trump has basically done everything he can. For a project I'm working on, I don't know. I mean, you guys have to really subscribe to my newsletter just for this alone. I'm looking at almost all of his Truth Social posts from the last couple of years, basically since Truth Social began in 2022. 2022, I think 2022, and you just see it, and it is just. I mean, he's tweeting. That's what I still call it. You know, scores of times a day. I mean, 50, 60, 70 times a day, and the steady stream of poisoning that comes out. I mean, we all focus on an individual post here, there, whatever, but it is just an unrelenting fire hose to his base, his Meshuggah MAGA people, of the Democrats, the deep state, radical lunatics, communists. They hate America. They're trying to destroy America. They want to come after you. They're supporting criminals, brown skinned criminals coming in over the border who want to rape you and pillage your towns and destroy America. I mean, it's never stops. And so if you're in that community, if you follow him, I get this in text messages because I sign up as a reporter for with different Republican groups and candidates, and I get a string every day of text messages telling me that Democrats and others and liberals and the media are trying to destroy this country and are supporting rapists and murderers and pedophiles and satanic cabals. And J.D. Vance is reminding me of this almost every day. Nancy Mace. Uh, so if you're one of the several tens of millions of Americans who are in this pool, you are being revved up and frightened and tossed red meat multiple times a day. I can't believe it doesn't affect people psychologically. And I mean, I find myself just reading these things over and over again. Oh my God, there is the deep state. Oh my God, why I got to worry about this? Oh my God, Joe Biden, he's a criminal. He's a mastermind. It's the Biden crime family. How can we I got to do something about this. I mean,
You have to hang the Democrats for sedition.
think about it. I mean, we human beings have evolved over hundreds of thousands of years to make decisions and to evaluate situations based on very little pieces of information. Call them impressions. Oh, the wind's blowing this way. That means a saber-toothed tiger might hear us now, so we better run that way. It's snap judgments. We survived because we made snap judgments in the wild, not because we sat down and decided, let's have an 80-point policy plan on how to gather our nuts and berries and kill our food. And so our brains still kind of have that reptilian portion to them. And so the steady stream of poison poison and venom. It has an impact on people, and he does that every day. He didn't do it with Mamdani, which we can talk about. That was really, I think Mamdani played him, but nevertheless, and so he's trying to keep his people together that way. But to your point, Epstein, the economy, I would add mass deportations.
Yeah,
These are
overreach,
things. These are
overreach.
things that people just don't like. The high school football star. No, we don't want to get rid of Jose. We like Jose. And he gave us the state championship, or the woman who lives around the street, or the woman who's been a waiter at the diner for the last 20 years, who always gives you the extra cup of coffee. Why are we sending the guys outside Home Depot who are helping put on a new roof on my house, on my neighbor's house? I mean, why are we getting rid of these people the way we're doing it? I mean, people don't like that. So back to what we talked
No,
about
but
earlier,
David, you know what you're saying is
gravitational pull.
it's the radicalization of his own base, a short-sighted Pyrrhic victory that got him to look like the anti-establishment man who would come in and clean the deep state. The Epstein files were the Rosetta Stone. He gets in, realizes, oh shit, I'm all up over in these files. I want to hide something. Overreaches on the economy, overreaches on immigration because he's surrounded by billionaires who are sociopaths and a sociopath named Stephen Miller. All of it's unpopular. Radicalizes this base that now has says that everyone who's opposed to me is a sellout. The base for, like you said, 10 years has engaged in stochastic terrorism against the press, against Democrats, poll workers, law enforcement, pretty much everyone. Now it has turned on MAGA. Not only has it turned on MAGA, David, I want to ask you this question before switching over to the Democrats. What MAGA now has to realize, and what I've been warning for a while, because I'm a masochist and follow these people, is, people forget Trump has been around for 10 years. That means for young people, the old timers of MAGA are rhinos. And this young Republicans in their 30s, they're more aligned with Nick Fuentes, Tucker Carlson, Groypers, Candace Owens, white nationalism, Nazis, and now all the old timers like Laura Loomer and Ben Shapiro and Mark Levine and Dinesh D'Souza are like, whoa, 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 this isn't the Republican Party that I know. And for me, it's like face-eating leopards enjoy eating all faces, even faces that wear red hats. The future of MAGA, as
Yeah.
you see, David.
Well, this is what I said earlier about the rules of political gravity. Remember in 2010, Kevin McCarthy. This is in my book American Psychosis. In 2010 or 2009, Kevin McCarthy took John Boehner to a Tea Party rally, I think in Bakersfield, out in California somewhere. And this is when the Republicans, 2009, were in the minority in the House. Obama had won in 2008. They were in the minority. They go out and they see the Tea Party, and John Boehner says, "This is it. This is how we get back into power. We absorb the Tea Party, we use the Tea Party, we get those votes, and we get these people worked up that Obama's a socialist, that he's a demagogue, that he wants to be emperor, that he's secretly born in Africa, and that, he's black. Obama, he's a black guy. He's a black
He's
man. He's a
black.
black man. He's black.
He's Muslim.
I mean, he might have fooled you in 2008, but remember this. He's black. Anyway, so they see this and they absorb and they embrace the Tea Party. They hold rallies in which Tea Party people come in and they hold up pictures of Obama as a lawn jockey or as Adolf Hitler. I mean, I don't know. There's a little bit of dissonance there.
Or also New York. Remember, New York Post had a cartoon cover as Obama as a dead monkey killed by police.
Yes, but anyway, Obama is Hitler. Obama is a lawn jockey. Make up your mind. Anyway, so they embrace all this nuttiness, and they win. 2010, they win. They become the majority party. 5 years later, where was John Boehner? Sipping Merlot, smoking cigars, and saying, "I'm fucking out of here," because the Tea Party guys who came in were unreasonable. They didn't believe in government, in anything, in passing anything or cutting any deals. They had government shutdowns. and they wanted to blow up the debt ceiling, which should have, could have led to a financial crisis around the globe. That may so happen in the next Congress. Um,
Well,
but
David,
then,
because this is an oldie but and a goodie for you, for nerds like you. Remember the old school young guns, Eric Cantor and Paul Ryan and Kevin McCarthy? Aren't they leading the GOP right now?
yeah, no, that we did a story about them at Mother Jones, not, I don't know, a year or so back. And not only did they leave, they all got tossed out because of the hatred of the Freedom Caucus and the Tea Party people. And so we saw this happen. So that's only a decade ago,
Yeah.
basically. That was a decade ago, and that begat, MAGA. That kind of, the folks that kicked out John Boehner and the others sort of became MAGA, and now we see within the MAGA movement this gravitation, this gravitating towards even more extremism and more radicalism. I mean, the book I wrote, American Psychosis, was all about the relationship for the last 70 years between the Republican Party and far right extremism. And they've just gotten more and more towards embracing it. And finally, that was the essence in some ways of Trump's movement. And the logical extension is that you keep going in that direction. So you have Trump having dinner with Nick Fuentes, the white nationalist Hitler fanboy, and now you have literally, I mean, it's kind of amazing to think about this. The last month, this debate within MAGA and the Republican and conservative movement about whether you should sit down with an anti-Semitic white nationalist Holocaust denier and treat him as part of the movement or not. I mean, that's
Yep.
what they're arguing about here. And people are saying, well, he's the next heir to Charlie Kirk. And I was no fan of Charlie Kirk, but I will say Kirk was not a Hitler fanboy, at least not openly. And so if he's the heir to Charlie Kirk, that's another gigantic step towards the right and towards fascism and Hitlerism. Um, and so yes, we're seeing, this is somewhat generational. It's not necessarily generational, but the MAGA movement is, I kind of think, I was talking earlier about you get fed this course of poison from Trump and everything. The more red meat you throw anybody, the animal or person, the more they crave it, the more they want it. And so the
They
Republican
get
Party,
radicalized.
yeah, the Republican Party over the 70 years, I talked about in this book, has been tossing red meat. And every time there's a new sort of round, it kind of happens maybe every half a generation or so, the red meat needs to be redder. I mean, what Donald Trump was pitching was redder in some ways than what the Tea Party was, which was redder than what Newt Gingrich did in the 90s. And so now, it makes perfect sense to me that the most radical figures on the right are the ones who are in some ways driving a lot of the conversation here. And at some point, I mean, Trump was, because he's a celebrity, because of his own natural, carnival barking con man talents, was able to sort of still sell himself to independent voters, and even to some, disaffected Democrats, while bear hugging the right. I mean, that takes some political talent. Like, let's recognize that. That's not an easy thing to do. And as they get more and more, as the MAGA movement gets more and more associated with or pulled towards Groypers and Fuentes and other far right lunatics, um, it's going to be harder for the Republican Party. As challenging as Trump was for the Republican Party, they found a way to accommodate that. It's just going to get more and more difficult. And if you look at, I think Trump's base is roughly about a third of the public, about
Yeah.
30%, 33%. Okay. And whatever he does, okay, that's fine. And again, I go to the fact that he has some particular advantages that don't apply elsewhere. But, you can't expand that if you're making love with Hitler fanboys. And so the more they go that way, the more that base is going to shrink and start fighting a little bit amongst themselves. So I don't want to say we should enjoy this, but I do think this is a very important dynamic that I don't think they're going to be able to escape.
Yeah, the good part is divide and conquer, face eating leopards, but the bad part is there is a life after Trump. And anyone who thinks MAGA is just going to go away, they haven't paid attention to this movement that is MAGA on steroids. And the young Republican leaders just go read their own messages, folks. It's all out there. Men and women in their 30s and 20s, they are further to the right. Of TPUSA, and they are more associated with or closely linked to Groypers, full on white nationalists, full on white Christian nationalists, full on anti Semites who praise Hitler. That is what's coming right after Trump goes, folks. So pay attention to that space. But speaking about Democrats, Democrats would say, here's an opening. Generational pain, generational damage, people demanding reform. You see the election of Mamdani, you see the polls. You know what we'll do? We'll go hug the corporate center. That is the way. We'll throw Mamdani under the bus and we'll reject him. And David, the way forward for the Democrats is bear a hug, the corporate center, take a photo with Netanyahu, a cave when your base says don't cave, and go centrist. Schumer truly is the way forward for the Democrats. Am I wrong here, David?
Oh, you got it right. Now,
Oh, thank you. I thought so.
see, um, I have a, I don't disagree with you, but I have a different perspective. And that is, as someone who's covered this for too damn long, I am bored, bored, bored with the center left fight. This is not a new fight. The Democrats have been having this fight for basically since the end of World War II, whether the party should appeal to people with a more centrist position or be more populist left, whatever. And my preference obviously is to be more populist left. But I've come to the conclusion that this internal debate is idiotic, and that we have a binary system. We don't have a parliamentary system with many parties. We have a binary system, and that the Democratic, Republican Party has always been a right of center party. In the past, it's had some moderates and some liberals, but it's always been a right of center party. The Democratic Party has always been a center and left party, and the center needs the left, and the left, in some ways, needs the center. And rather than get over, figure out we only have to go one path, I thought this last election was somewhat revealing in that basically it gives the Democrats the ability to say, you know what, we offer you a buffet. You want a young, fighting, populist socialist? You got Zorin. You want a middle class national security mom in Virginia? You got Stan Berger. And then we have others. You want a fighting governor, of the Midwest? You got Pritzker. You got, you want a sort of a slick but really savvy, liberal, sometimes moderate guy, good at messaging. You got Gavin Newsom, and all these people are talking about a similar thing: affordability. Now they're doing it in
There you
different
go. That's
ways,
the main
right?
one.
Yeah, they're doing it in different ways. If Mandami wants to talk about buses and grocery stores, and Mikey Sherrill wants to talk about electricity rates, fine. She doesn't have to do free buses in Trenton. And I think the party, particularly when we face the democratic crisis of this impending authoritarianism, if not fascism, coming from Trump, that you need a popular front, and you need people to sort of realize, okay, this isn't about politics. Is not about winning a debate. It's about winning votes, and there are different ways to do that. And if someone over here is doing it this way, don't get in the way. If you want to try it this way, a different way over here, well, do that. And there will be primaries when sometimes these two approaches clash. And guess what? Let the voters decide. All the Bernie fans out there, I like Bernie and I like his stance. But in 2020, he had a clean shot at the Democratic nomination. And he's not even a Democrat, but he had a clean shot at it. And Democratic voters said, nah, we love you, but we don't want you. We're going to go with Biden, right? That the system worked. The system worked. Biden more centrist. He ended up being more to the left as president than a lot of us thought he would be. So so I don't. I think people should just drop this and figure out what works. Because to me, it's not an issue of left versus right. It's fight versus no fight. Voters want people who want to fight for them, and whether it's electricity rates, of free buses, whatever it is, that's what they want to see right now. They don't care about 80-point policy position papers, whether it's from the DSA or from the Third Way, right, which is a centrist group for those
Yeah.
of you who don't bother with them. Um, and I think that you know that's just that the big tent ideology, or not to say ideology, the big tent approach is what people have to sort of buy into now and realize that anytime you're shooting at each other, you're not shooting at the other side. And I mean that just metaphorically. I don't believe people should shoot people. And then let's say water pistols. Every time you're shooting water pistols at each other, you're not shooting the super soaker on the other side. And so I understand there's a real strong impulse for people to have these sort of fights and debates. I encourage people not to, and I encourage people to look at what works. And and Hakeem Jeffries should have endorsed Mandami sooner, because that's just what that he's a Democrat. He got Democrats voted for him, and that's fine. And I think if other people are running in a more moderate direction, the DSA or liberal people online, should not get all in their face about that. And I mean, look at what's it's so interesting that even Mandani, there's a guy who joined the DSA recently who wants to challenge Hakeem Jeffries in a primary, Democratic primary, and Mandami just said he doesn't want him to do that because it's not a good use of resources and energy at this point in time. I thought that showed a certain degree. I won't say maturity because that sounds insulting, but a certain degree of sophistication here. Because what we're looking at, the only even though Trump only has 30 to 33% of the population, at least 20 to 30% are disengaged and not up for and up for grabs, but they're not interested in ideology. They're not interested. They're interested in talking to them in a way that they feel resonates with their life, and that could be a lefty approach, or it could be a more centrist approach. Um, and so, I mean, again, I have my own personal favorite, personal favorites on these sort of things. But I realize that that America's big. There are a lot of ideas out there, and most people in America, unfortunately, do not subscribe to my newsletter, do not watch your show. They get their politics only in a very impressionistic sense, and you have to find ways to reach them, and that's more important than coming up with an ideological strategy. Hope that makes
My
sense.
my response to you, and I'm going to tweak it, is the following. I agree with you that people want fighters. Agree with you people are sick of the establishment. I agree with you that it doesn't matter anymore, left-right stuff anymore. As you can see with the rise of both MAGA and democratic socialists, right? There's a reason why people voted for Trump. There's a reason why people supported Bernie. There's a reason why people voted for Trump and then Mamdani. The key issue that unites people is the system isn't working and affordability. I think it's a bottom versus top. 99% versus the 1%, us versus the elites, right? That's the message that galvanizes people. However, this is where I might disagree with you, is that when it comes to the progressives, they supported Biden. When it comes to Biden's economic agenda, it wasn't the progressives who tanked it. It was the centrists. It was Manchin and Sinema, right? Well, they call
Yeah.
themselves centrists, in quotation marks. When it comes to caving, it wasn't the progressives who caved. It was the alleged 8 centrists who just caved. When it came to supporting both Biden and Harris, it was the progressives who first rallied behind Biden when he said he made the stupid decision to stay in the race. And then it was also when Kamala came, the first group of people were black voters, black women, black men, and then the squad, because they know how to organize. The reason why I think the alleged corporate centrists, for lack of a better word, are a problem, David, is they still haven't endorsed Mamdani. And I think Trump ran circles around Schumer by bear hugging Mamdani before Gillibrand and Schumer. They still have embraced Netanyahu before embracing Mamdani, realizing that this entire generation has been radicalized by Gaza. And I believe that individual, regardless on both sides of the parties, who goes against the oligarchy and goes against, at least in word, against the billionaires, they will capture, David. They will capture where the majority is right now. I don't think Schumer has it, and I don't think the corporate Democrats see it, and I don't think I just don't think they. I haven't seen them
Well,
evolve.
I would add. I don't disagree. I would add an addendum, in that I don't think it's necessary. You can call them corporate Democrats. I've used that phrase. I don't object to it, but I think in some ways too. To me, like one of the big problems with the Democrats in Congress, and I have a sort of different take on Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer. I think they're just not as important as a lot of people think they are. But nevertheless, we can talk about that another day. It's not necessarily they're corporate Democrats. I just see a lot of the Democrats. I would call them conventional Democrats
All
and
right,
corporate Democrats. They don't understand the moment we're in,
absolutely.
or if they do, they just can't figure out. They're too wed to convention and tradition, to figure out how to break out of that and deal with the threat of Trump and MAGA, and their Republican allies. And I was just talking to someone today about the horrific performance of Senate Democrats during the confirmation hearings earlier this year of Kash Patel, Bobby Kennedy, Tulsi Gabbard, Pete Hegseth. I mean, they just really couldn't, meet fire with fire. And they had so much ammunition and so much material to use, and they just couldn't pull the trigger. And, even when it came to, the initial Doge stuff, they just have not been able to forge a narrative about what Trump is doing to this country. And once you come to that understanding, what a commensurate and effective response needs to be. They've been kind of lost in that way. And I think, just briefly on Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer, is that they're just still so stuck in sort of the legislative mud that they can't figure out how to sort of wade out of that. And again, it's not their job to be national leaders, but nevertheless, for some people, it's because of maybe their alliance with corporate centrism. I think for others, it's either age, ability, or incapacity to really understand reality. That they're
Yeah.
talk about being in a bubble. So I mean, there are a lot of
I do think
overlapping
they're
themes
not
here.
built for this. I don't think they're built for this. They're not built for this fight. They're not made for this moment. I do
Yeah,
think they're just not. They're not built for it. And we're not God. I don't know what's in their hearts, but it could be ideological, could be their makeup, could be corporate money, could be all of the above. But what I've seen for the past 10 years is like it's like a fighter. It's a fighter in the ring, David, who was really successful for a while. But it's like Eric Cantor misread the moment. Kevin McCarthy misread the moment. Paul Ryan
yeah,
misread the
yeah.
moment from their side. And I feel like these folks have just misread their base, the moment, the anger, the temperature, and they just don't have it in them to be agile or to evolve. And I feel like the sooner they realize the Mamdanis, and you don't have to, I agree with you, you don't have to be all the way left on the Mamdani, but he has a winning formula, the energy, the messaging,
Yeah.
the message. This is where people are. And there's a reason why people sadly, in this reckless, self-destructive country that we love, voted for Trump twice. And
And
the
the thing,
reason why a lot of people have then voted for Trump also voted for Mamdani.
and the thing too is, you're right. I mean, you don't have to be a democratic socialist to play that game and to do that well, and to connect with people. I don't think it's driven by ideology, because I look at someone like Gavin Newsom, who is basically a liberal with some moderate tendencies, and he's annoyed people on the left for certain positions. But when he decided to put that referendum on the ballot that will allow for redistricting, in California, to match what's happening in Texas, he was able to energize and create
Yeah.
a national movement. He had Democrats of all stripes across the nation engaged and sending money and supporting this. And that on election night, there was nothing else on the ballot in California. Yet people stood online for hours to vote.
65%, 65 to
It
35.
was tremendous voter turnout for this. And so, about a process issue, this was kind of unprecedented in American modern political history. So he did that, and that was not an ideological issue. That was purely tactical, hardball politics. And he got people motivated because he said, "We're going to punch him in the face." Again, I'm not for punching people in the face.
Figuratively.
Figuratively, we're going to kick people in the teeth. Figuratively, we're
Figuratively.
gonna, we're going to we're going to kick Trump in the what figuratively.
Figuratively.
Yeah, because and people said, "Yeah, I want to be part of that fight, and I will stand on, even though I know it's going to pass, because the polls all said it was going to pass. I will stand on line with my kid being cranky for 3 hours into the late hours of the night because I want to be a part of this. Not about voting." It's about being a part of something. So that to me said, okay, you got Mandami with free buses on one side of the country. You got Gavin Newsom with a procedural issue on another side of the country. People want to be part of a fight. Okay, and that's what the big takeaway is. And Hakeem Jeffries, Chuck Schumer, everybody else should see that. So when they see people, gaining traction on these issues, whatever they may be, they should say, that's the energy. That's the party. I'm part of it. And you don't have to like everything in your damn party. I mean, you just really don't have to. It's a parties are big, they're unwieldy. You can just say, I support him, but I disagree with that. And just leave it at that. Hakeem Jeffries could say, listen, I don't know if free buses can work, but this guy has energy. I'm on his side, and I hope he pulls it off.
And he
That's all
didn't
you
do
have to
that.
say,
And he
right?
didn't do that. And they
And he
keep
didn't do
messing
that.
up.
I mean, I tell my kids, when I grew up, I didn't like most of my friends. It's like they were just people I hung around with. They were the guys in the neighborhood. You wanted to play basketball, they were on your team. And so the idea that you have to have this ideological love affair with everybody in your party, no, they're a Democrat, you're a Democrat, you're doing it different ways. If you see them being successful and scoring with your own voters, you don't dump on them.
It's such political malpractice. I still don't think that's why I'm completely 10 toes down after having seen how they've behaved with Mamdani, that they just don't have it. They're not agile. They're not able to move. They're not able to evolve. And I think people are paying attention. And someone mentioned this. I'll let you go though, but I wanted to ask you this final thing. Speaking about fight, there's a fight club, according to the New York Times, within the Democratic Party. Did you see that piece that came out last night where there's allegedly a fight club? The first rule of Fight Club is don't talk about Fight Club. So they apparently broke the first rule and the second rule, which is don't talk about Fight Club. But apparently there's a progressive challenges by Warren and Van Hollen and others pushing against Schumer and trying to get Schumer out. And they apparently it's called the quote unquote Fight Club in the DNC. The New York Times came out with that piece last night. Did you see that?
No, I missed that today. I'll go look at it. The thing is, and I wrote about this recently in my newsletter called Ourland, davidcorn.com. And I kind of, the one thing that people need to understand, and I'm not putting down the effort against Chuck Schumer or if one should rise against Hakeem Jeffries, is that the Democratic leaders in both House and Senate, they're voted on by members of the caucus, and their number one job is to get members of their caucus reelected. The
Mm.
number two job is, if they have a majority, preserve it. If they don't have a majority, find out how to do it. You have to go down to 3, 4, or 5 before being a national spokesperson for the party really comes into play. Because, Mark Warner, I'm just picking him, I'm not picking on him, just picking Mark Warner, the senator from Virginia, doesn't care, I think, whether Chuck Schumer is a national spokesperson and doing great messaging on the Sunday talk shows. He cares, he's going to help me get elected. Do I need more money than I have? He's going to help me become chairman of this committee or that committee so I can get reelected again. And so that's, their constituencies are not national Democrats. It's these very small groups. And so if they're not doing something that you or me or others think they should be doing, it's largely because their caucuses don't want them doing it. Now, obviously, in the Senate here, where you're talking about people talking about challenging Chuck Schumer, want him to do more, want him to do this differently. But if they don't have a majority of Democratic senators, that means that Schumer is doing what most Democratic senators want. So the problem is not necessarily with him or Hakeem Jeffries; it's with the voters. The voters being the senators and the representatives. And I think people just need to, I'm not saying this to excuse them, or to give them an easy way out. But I just took it's an explanation when people wonder why they're doing what they're doing, and they have. And this was a problem that Chuck Schumer had with Manchin and cinema. This is a problem that Hakeem Jeffries will have with with the handful of Democratic moderates. To win a majority in both these houses, by and large, you need to have some people who are outliers, who are not in tune with the main liberal thrust of Democratic voters. And so if you didn't have Manchin and Sinema, you would not have had the majority, and none of Biden's stuff would have passed at all, even though they watered some of it down. And so it's a real dilemma for these leaders to figure out how to have a coherent message, how to serve the voters, and how to, herd these cats, particularly the cats like Manchin and Sinema, and the few House moderates on the Democratic side. So it's so again, I mean, if the Democratic senators could get together and get a Chris Murphy or somebody out there who would be the leader, who would have a much better on the talking points and a fiercer fighter, and maybe able to keep people hanging in together for a longer stretch of time, that would be great. I think that's a very, very, very tall task, and I'm not sure that that's what most Democratic senators want, which is the problem itself.
That's let's see, man, but they got to make a change. If they think that restoration is the way they're going to lose, it's a reformation and it's a generational moment. And I think people are misreading people's rage. I think there's a rage. I've been traveling all across America, and people have less fidelity to Democrats and the establishment. They want change. They want reformation. They want fighters. I personally have no faith in Schumer. I have no faith in Jeffries. And it's about, even if, like what you said, and I appreciate you explaining that to people, because people don't understand how the sausage is made, right? Like, why are these things happening? I think that's what's very important.
Yeah.
Why, what happens behind the scenes, behind the polls, and why, they have a guy like Schumer and Jeffries in their role. But it goes back to faith. People have lost faith in them. And once
Yeah.
people lose faith, no matter how competent you might be at your job of doing the dirty work that is necessary, and people want to see a fighter, and if they've lost faith in you as being a fighter, then you have to be replaced. And if you feel like no, I want to be there, then you have to ask yourself, am I doing more harm than good? And I feel like these men, with their poll numbers right now, they're doing more harm than good. And it's probably up to them, for the sake of our democracy, then to pass the baton or raise up someone who can then carry on the work.
Let
David,
me let me end with good news, because I don't disagree with you there. But the good news is that we don't need to fixate on Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer. I
mm,
think this election shows, and what we there are. Pritzker, there's AOC, there's Gavin Newsom, there Spamberger and Mikey Sherrill and Mandami now have to perform in their positions and be good executives and can show that Democrats can govern and address affordability issues. I mean, I think there are a lot of other people within the party now that have high profile and that can really be basically branding items for the party. So it's not like, oh, well, the party is just Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer.
brand
Shoot me now.
ambassadors,
The
brand ambassadors.
brand ambassadors. That's what I was trying to say. So shoot me now. So yes, so I think yeah, they're there. There are problems there, but we don't have to fixate on those problems, because there are other people in the lineup. And so that's the good news. And I think I think that sets the Democrats up well for the midterms. I think there are going to be some very exciting candidates out there, and they're going to be supported by people like Mandami and Pritzker and AOC. And I think there's a way to have a much better image of the party and a higher level of energy that does end up engaging with younger people, disaffected people, and people who just want to see someone who's willing to fucking kick ass.
My kids heard that, but it's okay. They've heard their mom say far worse. I had to move to the other room because my charger was there. There was only 3% left. Thank you all for watching. We have 1,700 people. I'm with Washington, with Mother Jones of Washington D.C. Bureau Chief David Korn. We're talking about the fracturing, or maybe collapsing of MAGA. What happens after MAGA, and furthermore, what's happening within the Democratic Party for the soul and the message of the party. We covered a lot. David joined me. He was only supposed to be for 35 minutes, but he was on a roll. And we went back and forth. For those who are joining us late, we'll have it up later on my Substack tonight. But David has this newsletter. You might have heard him talk about it. It's called Our Land. David, how can shamelessly promote yourself and Our Land?
Please sign up at davidkorn.com. It's a free trial subscription. If you like it, you can give me a few bucks. Otherwise, you can just get an abbreviated version. So please, help me, help you, help me. So sign up for it at davidkorn.com.
And folks, this is the left hook. I'm a terrible capitalist like David. If you have some dollars, give it to David in our land. If you have a few dollars left over, give it to the left hook. It's all independent. It's all no paywalls. I've kept deliberately everything for free because I'm a fool. You probably heard some of my 800 kids in the background. So if you can, I know it's Thanksgiving. The economy's tough. Save your money if you can. Give some to David. If you have a few dollars left over, I kept it super $5 a month. It's all free either way, but it really goes a long way. I depend on the kindness of strangers. And David, have a good Thanksgiving. Don't work on Turkey Day. Rest. This town will drive you nuts. David is only age 25, but he looks like a 55-year-old man. Look at him. Look at him. Look what this age, look what this town makes David do. He's a 25-year-old man, and look what happened to him. Thank you all. Take care of yourselves. Be kind. And please, oh, please don't be a fascist. Thank you, David.